What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another video, and this time we're back on the Steam Deck with Monster Hunter Wilds, and it's January 2026 update, hopefully making it more playable across the board for all kind of platforms, especially here on Steam for the Steam version, which the patch has some specific updates for. And I wanted to jump in and take a look at launch day performance versus some of the new stuff here to see how it's performing on the Steam Deck. Still a game that's a bit much for the deck, but I wanted to see how it has improved and if it is indeed better since it's been a while. Now, as far as the patch goes, this released on January 27th or 28th, depending on where you're at here in 2026. Part of a December and February round of patches that are coming out to help fix up the game a good bit. And they did a lot here for the Steam version, and a lot of changes to how you can adjust CPU settings now, some of the GPU processing, other optimizations that they've got in here, and bug fixes and things like that. So it really helps out with lower end hardware here, and of course in other ways to help with the performance. Now, these are launch day settings that you're seeing here, and the only thing that's really missing is the CPU tab, that when we tab over we just go to graphics instead of the CPU. And there's some other optimizations and changes in here when it comes to those fog settings and things like that that were in the patch notes on launch day versus the new. Now, if we jump over here to the January 2026 update, you can see this screen here is pretty much the same, but if we tab over, we now have that CPU tab, which has some ability to reduce other things on the CPU side of things, which definitely helps devices like the Steam Deck that don't necessarily have the beefiest of CPUs. And then there's other optimizations in the GPU side that they've worked on here, and there's a few different things when you go through the settings to adjust this way too. And I did leave things with FSR on balance. I didn't worry about frame gen in this one because I really don't like using frame gen at such a low frame rate anyway, but it does work in this game on the deck, and I did cover that before. But yeah, this is what we got now for our settings, and a little bit more freedom to make it a little bit more playable. Now, this is launch day performance here at one of the base camps, and it was a real struggle back then at 18 to 22 FPS to kind of get this running enough to, be, well, if you want to call it playable. It was pretty rough, especially out in these areas. Now, it still is pretty rough again for the Steam Deck and what it's capable of doing here, but if we come to the January 2026 update in this same spot, it's much better. Now, of course, we've been able to lower some more of the settings, a little bit different time of day and stuff here, but it runs much better. No longer 18 to 22 FPS. It still dips and stuff, but it feels a bit smoother. Frame times aren't too bad. There's some skips here and there, but we ultimately get a good amount of FPS here over that 18 to 22 that we were getting at launch time. Matter of fact, I had to turn frame gen on back then at launch to get into the 30s, 30, 35 FPS or so there. And again, I didn't really like frame gen at such a low FPS, but I did use it back then, and that's what I got with that. Now, if I run out into the same desert area here too, we'll start off pretty good on FPS, but it's still going to dip down very much like it did at launch when you get out into the kind of open world area and start going down to the teens and 20s, and really is going to depend on where you're at. Frame times were a bit better. Didn't feel as janky, but it's still a very low frame rate when you get out to something like this, and there really wasn't much else for me to lower. Getting in the areas that maybe don't have so much draw distance going on, or there's still less happening, or we didn't have kind of like that big herd out in the field, our FPS will come back up here and be pretty decent. So yeah, it seems like they have done a pretty good job here with this patch and being able to make this a bit more playable here. We still do get a lot of frame rate dips, and you're still going to spend a lot of time in the 20s and low 30s and that type of thing. And you could get a little bit more aggressive with the upscaling here, which is only going to help you on the GPU side. Anywhere that's CPU heavy, you're still going to get those dips and drops in your FPS, but it is a bit cleaner. It does run a bit smoother. I did notice that when I was playing through here compared to how launch was on the Steam Deck and how it felt to kind of run around and be in combat. And I could be wrong because it can still look pretty rough at 800p using FSR balanced or performance, or even ultra performance if you want to go that way. But I feel like when I was looking at these kind of side by side a little bit ago and comparing them to launch to now, that even FSR balanced side by side, the newer update was actually looking better. I feel like the picture quality is better in this update, while the game is also running better and a bit smoother. And maybe that's just me, but I just felt like it did look a bit cleaner and looked a little bit nicer while also running better. But anyways, I'm going to test this on the other handhelds as well. I want to jump into the Legion Go 2 now that this has some updates in the Xbox Ally X and all of that. But I want to start with the Steam Deck and see how things were running here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, thanks a lot for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next one.